Alright. I am a black, heterosexual, cisgendered female who also identifies as a first-generation Ethiopian American. I grew up in a predominantly white school district right outside of Milwaukee called Wauwatosa. My closest friends growing up were white. My teachers, doctors, pastors, and role models were all white. I was immersed in a population that was just generally white. I was in this bubble where I wasn't exposed to many other races. But that's how I grew up, and I didn't know anything else. To me, that was normal. At the age of 4, I remember telling my mom one day that I wanted blonde hair. And she told me that I could dye it. But I actually wasn't asking her to change the color of my hair. I wanted to be like my friends. I wanted straight hair. I wanted the privilege of not having to spend hours under the embrace of my mom while she braided my hair. I wanted the privilege to easily change my hairstyle halfway through the day. I didn't want my black hair. When I was about 12 years old, I started to question some of my features. I had cried to my mom, saying that I wanted smaller lips, a smaller nose, or even a smaller bottom, and each time she would tell me that I was as pretty as anyone else. She'd say that God creates us all differently, and so that we can be pretty in many ways. She supported me and reassured me that I was pretty, but my environment did not tell me that. I actually had a pretty interesting role in school, I'd say. For many of my friends, I was their only black friend. Being their only black friend, I became the source of all things black. I had an interesting role in middle school. People started asking about my blackness. I'd get questions like, "Is that your real hair?" Or, "I love it when you straighten your hair." Or, "Why don't you wash your hair every day?" And I'd give the same black hair spiel about how my hair is relaxed, but that doesn't really mean that I can't not do everything that you can do. I have to chemically straighten it every few months, and I can't wash it every day because shampoo is really harsh, and it went on and on. People would also ask me if I could do certain things or if I liked certain things because I was black. People were surprised to learn that I didn't play basketball, that I didn't like fried chicken, that I couldn't sing, you name it. As much as I liked that my friends were curious, I think I developed the sense that I wasn't black enough, according to my friends' standards and opinions on what black is. Friends would even tell me that I was like an Oreo, black on the outside but white on the inside. At that age, I took that to heart. I grew up in an environment that emphasized that being white is right, and I unconsciously wanted to be white. Having friends that told me that I was basically white made me almost happy in a sense. I liked that my friends saw that I was like them. In a sense, they were pointing out the whiteness in me. They were showing that they accepted me. However, I knew that being called an Oreo was a strange backhanded compliment. It was almost like, "We see that you're trying to be like us, but you'll always be black." I was confused. I wasn't even sure if I was even black. I don't recall completely refacing my race until I started figure skating, specifically synchronized skating. Synchro has been a significant portion of my life for the past 8 years. It's a sport that emphasizes on being synchronized, obviously. 16 girls wear matching outfits and perform a skating program in an attempt to move as one body. It's a sport that has taught me so much about teamwork, resilience, dedication, and leadership. As wonderful as the sport is, I didn't realize what I was getting myself into, and I felt my outward differences right away. As a sport dominated by white females, I still got the questions and comments, and my racial identity was manifested in a completely different way. I can confidently say that it has been the one area of my life that has placed the most emphasis on my race, identity, and culture. It has been a sport that has taught me the most about privilege. Things like mesh for my dresses, makeup, and hairstyling all had to be altered for me. Although I was appreciative that the coaches made sure that my nude mesh matched my skin and that my blush could be seen on my cheeks, it drew a spotlight on my blackness. I felt like a burden at times. I was the reason that the costume had to be reconsidered for a black person. I didn't have the privilege of my white teammates who never had to worry about their mesh or their blush. During my sophomore year, a few years later, I was offered a spot on our nationally qualifying team at the UW, which at the time was my goal in skating. I was beyond ecstatic. However, I was placed in a shared spot, meaning that I was only guaranteed to skate at half of the competitions. For my first year on the team, I was okay with that. I mean, at least I made the team, right? I was excited to skate on a team where I could be challenged. I was excited to represent the UW at a national level. I was excited that the coaches saw something in me and that I was getting a chance to act upon it. My lower skill level also made me feel inferior to my teammates overall, since I was new. I felt like I had to constantly prove myself. I had to show that I was capable at doing many things outside of skating. And as many as my teammates didn't interact with non-white skaters, I didn't want my skills to represent all black people. I was worried that my low skill level would add to the variety of negative black stereotypes propagated in our society. As the practices went on, I soon questioned the roster of our team. We had 13 girls in full spots, and we had 6 girls who shared a spot, 2 girls to 1 spot. As a sport that is judged solely on skating skill, a team roster should only be determined by skating skill. Unfortunately, that was not the case for our team. There were some unofficial criteria that determined spots. There were some skaters who were grandfathered into the team because they were on the team last year, or there were also some skaters who had full spots because they held an important position on the club board, such as president or captain. There were some girls who were chosen to skate over others because they had external connections to the coaches, such as an existing friendship. And there were some girls who were chosen not to skate because they stuck out. Looking back to that season, I cannot deny the fact that my race most likely had a role in determining whether I skated or not. This is tough. I was trying to participate in a sport that looks for unison, and as my skin color sticks out, it's guaranteed that the judges would keep their eyes on me. And as a weaker skater, that did not play in my favor whatsoever. If I was more likely to make an error because I was a weaker skater, now, because of my skin color, there was a greater chance that a judge would catch it because of that natural difference in my skin color. As convenient as it was to wish that I could blend in, to wish that I had the privilege of being white, I had to accept and embrace my blackness. I had to show that I, too, a black woman, was capable of doing everything that my white counterparts were doing. And so I did. After only skating once during that season, I was determined to work back up to a level where I wouldn't have to worry about my race becoming a deciding factor in my position on the team. The following year, I received a full position on the team. I realized, however, that my race was still part of my identity. I was called the Synchro GPS because my coaches could always spot me out in the videos, and then they'd use me as a reference point to point out the other girls. I was called our token black skater because it seemed like every collegiate synchro team had one black skater, and I was UW's. I mentioned that I liked Beyonce one day, and I was named Team Beyonce after that. I was also called Team Gangster. And, I know that all of this was out of humor, but looking back, the root of it was about race. I knew that it was an attempt to make the racial differences less awkward, and I laughed to try to ease the tension, but each comment and each name pointed out my race and isolated me, as if I still didn't belong. This really brought to my attention my race and how it did stick out. It was an enormous example of how racial privilege plays a role in group performance sports. Additionally, as much as I've learned about racial privilege that I don't have, I was also exposed to the economic privilege that I do have. When people learn that I'm a figure skater, I usually receive some sort of comment that essentially says that I have talent. However, I don't think it's talent. I had the opportunity. Skating, and any other ice-based sport, is an incredibly expensive sport, mostly due to the high cost of maintaining rinks. The price of skating is a huge barrier for people who want to skate but can't afford it. I'm positive that anyone who wants to skate, when given the opportunity to learn, could skate. It's just that not everyone with the passion has this opportunity. For example, look at two equally able-bodied children that want to be figure skaters. The first child comes from a household that can afford to spend the money on skating, and so they learn how to skate. The second child comes from a household that chooses not to spend the money on skating, and so child number 2 will not learn how to skate. Therefore, the child who was able to skate in the end was the one that was given the opportunity, not necessarily the one that had the natural talent. Skating is a sport that greatly depends on the amount of money that you are willing to pour into it. And because of this fact, the skaters who rise to the top are predominantly from wealthier upper-class families, and they're the ones that had the opportunity. To me, the privileges found within figure skating, including racial privilege and economic privilege, are analogous to the privilege associated in academic success and career building within our society. I'm sure there are many people who are intellectually completely capable of being the next CEO of a company or obtaining a medical degree, but they might lack a certain opportunity to harness and utilize their potential. A lot of our success depends on our current state, our current environment, our access to services, the way the world perceives us, the connections we have, and as health professionals, we need to realize these factors and how they might have interacted with a patient's life. We can't let these identities affect the way we treat a patient, a coworker, a boss, anyone. Through discussing our experiences in handling privilege, we will become more aware of what we have and what we don't have and how we can best help the other part. This is just one step towards understanding, but that step can make a huge difference for another person.